This is Dr. Mary Kalantzis, Dr. Bill Coe, and we're delighted to have them here from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, right? I'm always spelling that Champagne incorrectly.
I'm sorry about this. Did you correct?
No, it's done, yeah.
You did it. Oh, excellent.
So Dr. Bill and Dr. Mary are very widely known for their work in the area of multiliteracies and all sorts of areas. They publish widely over many years, so many of the faculty members are very excited to see them here today as they talk today in Abu Dhabi and tomorrow in Dubai. So we're very happy to welcome them here on behalf of the College of Education as part of the Treasures of Reading seminar series. As I said to you this morning, I'm going to be recording this, so don't think ridiculous. I hope you really enjoy it, and it will be some time for questions afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you, good morning to all of you. How are you this morning? How long have you been here in the program? The students? How long in the program? Is your first year, second year, third year? What?
First year.
First year?
Second.
Second, in your second year. Oh, very nice. Thank you. Anna asked us to come, and you, the educators, you're the future of your country. And the reason we come to places like this is because we want to be part of your journey in some little way, something that we might offer you that might help you achieve your goals. So I hope what we have to say is useful to you, but you are the most important people. Educators, teachers, the children that you touch, the foundation that you lay is very important. There is a very famous American physicist, who's a scientist, a Nobel Prize winner, and he said that splitting an atom, right, is pretty hard. But to split an atom, you know all the contextual issues that go into splitting an atom, right? But when it comes to transforming a child, all the contextual issues are even more complex than splitting an atom, right? Because everyone is different. Every individual, is very different. And you as a teacher, if you want to transform them, and that's your job, you have to make them become what they want to be and what your nation wants them to be. There's no single answer. So I suppose that's the message we've come to reinforce. I'm sure it's the message that your professors are sharing with you. We do believe that you can choose to be a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that, but to be an educator is key. It's what matters more than anything else in terms of individuals and in terms of your nation. So I just wanted to say that. I'm an Australian, but my parents were Greek. They were born in Greece. Do you know where Greece is? In Europe, ancient Greece. And modern Greece, but they were immigrants to Australia. Right? And now I'm an immigrant in America. The world is becoming more and more interconnected, and certainly your country, from what I've learned, is a very multicultural, very diverse nation. So, we are preparing learners for a very different kind of world than when I grew up, or when my grandparents, or maybe your own grandparents were here. So, let me take you through this. I wanted to find out a little bit about you, and just a little bit, so I apologize if I don't understand it very well, but whenever I go somewhere, I like to know a little bit about who the people are and what matters in that country. So I went to your official website, the government website, and I was very impressed that there's a big national agenda, a new national agenda in the country, with 6 very important objectives, right? And the first one is a cohesive society and preserved identity. Every country needs that, every community. We're preparing children to have strong identities, because performance equals identity and time on task. So how you feel about yourself, whether it's math or science or history, influences time on task. And those two things together, identity and time on task, equals performance. Right? So it's important that your government thinks that matters. Right? That we have strong identities. It doesn't matter where we're from, you need to be confident in your identity, and also understand the identity of others. because you can't have a cohesive society unless you understand yourself and are strong, and you understand others, and they are equally strong. So that together you can make a good society. So that was very impressive. And the other thing which is equally important, this is what you're doing, is a first-rate education system. You're going to get a first-rate education system, but you're going to provide a first-rate education system, right? And you'll be learning from your professors, learning from the experience you have. And I think Anna, when she brings people from elsewhere, it's also another model and other ideas that come into your lives. So that was very important to me to see that that is part of your country's agenda. The other thing is that I noticed there's a literacy, a national literacy agenda too, because literacy is very important. But you'll see that we regard literacy in a very broad kind of way. It's not just alphabetical literacy. What we're going to share with you is that literacy in the modern world is more than alphabetical or symbolic literacy. Right? And the other thing here was the, I can't read that now. Did anyone read that?
Education 2020.
Oh, the education, the big education agenda. And I like this. It says there. It talks about education, the education system, a qualitative improvement in the way teachers teach and the way students learn. Right? So your government thinks something needs to happen, right? About how you teach and how people learn. And they're connected, right? It's pretty enlightened for a government to say that, yes? It's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. So that was very good. And then the other one is, and this is very important, that you are preparing people, or at least your government thinks this, to attend universities around the world and compete in the global marketplace. Okay? So you're preparing people for your local community, for your nation, and for the world. So remember, identity, strong, and yet global, moving in and out. So I just wanted to say I felt comfortable about this. I thought, okay, what we're doing aligns with this. Right? And this is what you guys and gal, well, we say guys in America, sorry, I've assimilated. It's very easy to do that.
We do that here too.
You do that. Right, so again, I felt that what we had to say was useful. The other thing that I found out, which you know very well, is all the languages that are spoken here, right? So you're going to prepare learners who are going to deal in their own communities with people who are multilingual, right? Also fits in with what we think. So, Arabic, of course, and English, and Persian, and Urdu, and Hindu. And then the ethnic groups, I was surprised to see how diverse. I gather there are 200 nationalities living in your country. Is that correct? Every day. And working and engaging. I read that on one of the sites. And it's a big responsibility to prepare your children to deal in that world effectively, to be good citizens, good workers, good learners within a country that is so diverse, particularly when your own minority, right? That was said. I don't know how you guys do it. It's a big challenge, but it's an important challenge, and you are preparing for that. But the other thing that matters to me and to the work that Bill and I does is the degree to which we connect with this new technology. Because the affordances of this new technology are really important and growing every day. And you can see here in this chart, you've got population growth from 2000, from a small number to, I think there's almost 10 million people here, right? Almost that. There's the statistics I gather. I looked up, they were different. 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, 9 million, 10 million. But anyway, it's a lot of people. But what was interesting is that 91% of them use the internet, right? So tech savvy. So you are preparing kids for a tech savvy world. That means you guys have to be tech savvy to prepare them for a tech savvy world, right? So anyway, this is not new to you, right? But I needed to get it. And all educators, even if you're going to be with somebody for 10 minutes, need to kind of know something about where you're going. So it was important for me not to come in without trying to find out a little bit. Okay, so multiliteracies. I don't know if you've read, has anyone read any of our work? Multiliteracies? Yeah. It's okay. But I do want to tell you that knowledge doesn't just happen from individuals, it happens from collaboration. And in 1994, Bill and I were educators in Australia. Australia is a very multicultural country too. 50% of almost 50% of the population has one person born overseas. Many languages, right? Very many languages. America's like that too. You know, most of the so-called New World is very diverse. So we were in Australia way back then thinking that as professors, we were writing books, you know, having ideas, teaching, but the gap between those who could perform and those who couldn't perform in school was getting bigger, not smaller. So how does that happen? What happens? And in multicultural countries, we have indigenous peoples in Australia, of course, they were there before us, right? And then you had the English who arrived, and then you had people from Europe, and people from India, people from Asia, people from the Arab world, from different languages, you know, different backgrounds, different periods. Therefore, the school has to be very complex to be able to serve all those people's needs. And what we were seeing was a gap in underachievement, you know, and a bigger gap between those who can succeed in everything they wanted and those who couldn't. So we thought, we have to, as educators, we have to do something. So Bill and I had a bit of money, and we looked at who around the world was doing the same work, and we met in New London in America, because it was cheaper to fly everybody to America than to fly them to Australia. So we got together, and we published an article which went in the Harvard End Review, and you might want to look it up. I'll leave you these slides, and if anybody. And then we published a book, and this was the group. Some of those authors you might know. I don't know if you've read any, you know, Jim G's work on new technology, Courtney Cassidy on discourse analysis. I don't know if you've read any of that work, but anyway, these were the people that we brought together, and we wrote the first article without using our names. We just called ourselves the New London Group, because we didn't want to advance our careers, we wanted to say something that mattered. So we called ourselves after the town of the hotel in which we stayed in. It was ironic to be in New London in America. We thought it was funny. But anyway, so the work came from there, and I will describe the work to you now, but if you want to read about it, then you can go back to the original manifesto, the New London Group. We called it a pedagogy of multiliteracies, designing social futures. Because you guys as teachers, that's what you're going to be doing. You are designing social futures for the little kids in your classroom. So that's what we called it, and then the book followed. So, multiliteracies. As I said, literacy learning and the design of social futures. What was the purpose? I've already touched on that. Each one of your purposes is not to teach math, it's not to teach history, it's not to teach English, it's to transform somebody so they know math or English or history, right? So it's not getting through the curriculum that matters, right? Turning the page and getting through. It's knowing that you've changed somebody. That's all performance is for an educator, that you know you've changed them. Your teachers are looking for that in you. They want to know that you've changed. You've come in not as a teacher, you're going to finish as a competent teacher, a competent educator. You have to be transformed. So that's our purpose. But we're not only becoming teachers, we're becoming citizens, you know, workers and learners. And we have to prepare for those skills too, because that's why you have math or history or geography or whatever. You don't only have it for book learning, because you learn skills to be a citizen and a learner and a worker and a professional. And the other thing for us is literacy, in fact any kind of learning, is an act of designing. It's not a textbook and a space. It's you making choices. You are constantly designing. When you make meaning, you are designing. And so we didn't want to use the word grammar, which is about labels. Right? Grammar is about labels. We wanted to use a new word, a more powerful word, that showed that meaning making is an act of designing. And we say there are three things that impact a learner. 3 things, and the rest of my talk is going to take you through each one of those 3 things. And the first one, I go back to what I've already made, is diversity. You guys are different, each one of you, right? Each one of you is diverse. Diversity is with us. There's ethnic diversity, there's cultural diversity, there's gender diversity. Diversity is a very broad term, but it's something every educator needs to recognize in each of their students. And I'm sure your professors know you like that. They know who can put up with a lot of jokes, perhaps, or who can, be a leader in a team, or who needs some encouragement to participate. All that is part of diversity, right? So diversity, it needs engagement and what we call differentiation. You might have heard that term in your work. So that's the first point, and very important. I'm going to say some more about that. The second one is multimodality. How do we make meaning? So I'm talking to you now in alphabetical English. I'm using my hands, I'm moving around, I'm using space, I'm coming close to you. All of that has meaning, right? For us, multimodality was different discourses, different languages, and with the new technology, different ways of making meaning. Now, I was going to say this earlier, but I'll say it now. What do you think the most revolutionary thing is about the new technology? Does anyone? Don't be shy. A little shy? What do you think the most revolutionary thing is about the new digital technology? How do I want to address this?
On a limited scale, I think it affords so many opportunities for many of these areas.
Right, but it's not the right answer.
Okay.
But that is a good answer, but it's not the answer I'm looking for. The most revolutionary thing about the digital technology is that with one click, you can get a symbolic language, one click you get a picture, one click you get audio. The manufacturing of meaning, right, was before you need technicians to take photographs, technicians for the audio, different people for alphabetical or symbolic. But now the digital allows you to make meaning, right, across different modes. That is the most revolutionary thing. We have to prepare our learners to be able to use that. That's one of the affordances, right? Our little kids, like I have a grandchild now who's 8 months old, right? And he picks up this, picks it up, little tiny little kid, he knows he does things. It's a language for him, right? He understands it in a way that before we used to pick up a book and turn the page, he still picks up books because we're multimodal as well. So multimodality and the making of meaning through new technology, which allows for different languages. You can have, you can wear a device here on your body or in your ear, and you can walk and you can speak Arabic, and it will translate immediately as you're speaking to me into my ear, right? Amazing. And I'll hear it, and you'll hear my English back to you. So multimodality, multilingualism, all these things are opened up, the opportunities that you spoke. But the revolution is in the digital. Quick, that's it. But third and equally important is what we call pedagogy, right? Making the appropriate choice. Remember, you are the designer. What do you need? What do you 3 need, right? How do I make a choice, right? Even if the book says we're all going to do algebra now and this is not all of you will be at the same level. And the choices you make as a professional. I was saying to Anna yesterday, for us education teachers are about repertoires. You know what a repertoire is? How do I describe it? When we play music, you have a variety of music and a variety of things that you're performing. So you don't just play one song, you play many songs. You have a repertoire, right? So teachers too need to have a pedagogical repertoire. There's, again, no single approach will work with every subject, will work with every classroom. So expanding your repertoire is how we prepare you to be a good professional that can cope in any context. So they're the three things that make a difference. You make choices, you differentiate. Okay? Am I going too fast?
Okay.
You with me? You're traveling with me? Okay. So, we call them interventions around diversity. Okay? So, the first thing, I put it all together because you're smart enough for me to give you all the information on one page. Typically, it's not a good thing to do, but mostly when we talk about diversity, we talk about gender and age and ethnicity and faith, these sorts of things. But if I walk into a classroom, you're all women, and I think I know what it is to be a woman, and I project on you, I could be very wrong. Is that correct? Because each one of you is a woman your way. Right? So, the same with faith, how you live your faith, or, any of these things. It is important not only to categorize people like this, say, I have a classroom, people who are Pakistani, or a classroom of people who are X or Y. You have to say, what kind of life experience have they had? What kind of languages or dialects do they speak? What's their style? How do they engage with the world? This is what we call the life world. And remember going back to the contextualism. Have they had breakfast this morning? Right? Has their mother and father had a fight? Right? These other life world issues are as important as these gross demographics. Right? So when we talk about diversity, it's this complexity that we're talking about, not just grouping people. So here's an Australian, but I can't guess an Australian man. I can project onto him, calling them, what did we used to call oggers? But I really don't know him. And so if I want to change and transform him, I have to know a bit more than what I project onto him. Right. So it's very important that you as educators understand diversity and complexity. So what do we do as teachers? Right? You have to know the prior knowledge that people have. What do you bring into the classroom? There's no point repeating what you already know. Remember, it's transformation. How do you extend and how do you build on the knowledge that somebody has? How are you flexible and change your approach? So if you're not getting it right, how do you change or shift or do what's required for the individual or the group? You need a variety of knowledge processes, not one. I'm just using the lecture mode. And I'm looking at your bodies and seeing if you're paying attention or comfortable. That's all I can do. But if I have you all the year, I can look for other signs and other ways in which you're engaging so that I can modify my approach. You have to negotiate learning. What is it that you need? What is it that I can offer you? What do I need to bring in order to make sure that you have what you need? If I don't speak the same dialect, can I bring in somebody to help you, to expand your repertoire? Right? And very importantly, and I'm not allowing you to do this today because I'm giving you a traditional lecture, is you change the direction of the knowledge flows so that you can tell me what you need. Right? I'm guessing what you need. I'm giving you my expertise. But my expertise might not be what you need. Right? How do I know that? Because if I can use this whole time telling you what I know, and it'll be a waste of your time if it doesn't connect with your needs. Complete waste of your time. When you do that with the little kids, it's tragic, right? Because your responsibility is to help them become. And this is very important in any learning, is to change the balance of agency. I'm in charge now. I have all the agency. You'll say, what's you going to do next? I asked him a question, I asked you a question. All the agency is mine. But in a classroom where you want to transform people, you have to change the balance of agency. You have to be able to say to me, I didn't understand that, and I haven't read this, and what can I do? So you have agency as well, right? In a regular classroom period. Learner agency matters. If a child is quiet and shy and doesn't know how to ask for things, you have to encourage that, right? But agency is very important. In traditional classroom, we have authoritarian agency, right? The teacher in charge, the teacher knew best, The textbook knew best, you learned it off by heart and reproduced it. That's also important, but it's not enough. Right? Remember repertoires? Sometimes that matters. But for a teacher, you have to be authoritative, not authoritarian. Authoritative means you're deeply knowledgeable and you know what to bring into the class. Perhaps another teacher, perhaps co-teaching, another expert, but you need to be authoritative. Sometimes you need to be authoritarian, but if authoritarian is what you rely on, you don't know what transformation you've done or not. So that's the issue of diversity. Was that okay? It aligns with what you're thinking? Yes? No? Okay. The next one is multimodality. That's the next point we make. Remember, we are born into designs. If I put a baby in the middle of the floor here and I go away, what happens to the baby? What happens to the baby? Somebody tell me. If I put it on the floor.
Someone will take care of it.
I didn't say that. What will happen to the baby who's on the floor here?
Someone will pick it up.
And you guys go, nobody does. What happens? The baby will die. Right? People become in and through other people. That's human beings. Just because a baby is born to me, Greek, Australian, it's not going to like souvlaki. It's not going to speak Greek. It's not even going to like my face. If you raise it, it's going to like you. It's going to learn Arabic. Right? Human beings are not born with genetic predispositions towards particular cultures or particular nations. They become in and through other people. Very important thing to understand, right? So we are born into available designs. We're born into a language, born into cultures, born into habits, right? Born into them. Then we engage with those things, right? In the process of engaging, then we create the redesign. And even though it looks the same, it's always different. Right? So the process of meaning making, it's not wired into your brain, wired into your body. It's this engagement of being born into a community, engaging with that community, learning from that community, and then contributing. It's learning transformation. Because, my little grandson, right, he's 8 months old. My granddaughter, she's 7.5. And this little boy is an invader in her life. Because she was everything. She was our beautiful girl, she was our princess. And this little boy turns up, and we say the same things to him, and she's a little bit upset about that. She loves him, but she's a little bit upset. But she's even more upset because I babysit. And I've decided, because I'm of Greek background, that I want the baby to learn Greek. And she's very cranky about that because she doesn't know Greek. She's very upset that I'm teaching the baby Greek. She says, don't speak to him in Greek. I said, but this is my last chance to have a grandchild speaking Greek. I spoke to her in Greek too when she was a baby, but it was very hard to keep the language going. Right? But she's very, very upset. But so, she wants to connect to that child, and she thinks if he speaks Greek, she won't connect to him. These are the complications that we're all dealing with. I'm trying hard. I pay for her to learn Greek, and she now doesn't want to because William is speaking Greek. Complex issues that you have to engage with in the designing process, right? So remember the available resources, the way we engage, and then the transformation. So that's how we view literacy in that process, right? So having to understand the dynamic process. Right, and the other thing is that, particularly with this new technology now, right? We have oral meetings and written meetings, and they are very different. See, when I speak, I don't speak in full sentences. I correct myself, I adjust. But when you write, it has to be exactly pre-thought with capitals or full stops or, particular formats. So all meaning making and written meaning making is very different. We have visual meanings, we have spatial meanings. I'm using this, but I'm making meaning from this space, which you are reading, right? And in the digital domain, space is so important. Tactile, touch and feel meanings, gestural and audio. So in multimodality, we said when a child is born, it does all those things, right? All those meanings. But when he goes to school, we strip them out. Don't touch, don't move, don't dance, don't draw. All you do is symbolic meaning making, writing. The highest form of meaning making in a school is writing. Okay? In the traditional school. But in the new school with new technology, that's not the case anymore. Meaning making, and Good Press, one of our writers says, is done more powerfully with images now than it is with symbolic writing. And even symbolic writing is meaning. I don't share this with you too, I usually say this, but in Iraq there was Abu Ghraib, the prison. Do you read about it in the newspapers? Right. The Red Cross had written a report about the atrocities in Abu Ghraib. It had written a full report about what was happening in this prison. Right? It was on the internet. Everybody had read it. Governments had read it. Lawyers had read it. Perfect alphabetical English. Had no impact. Somebody went into the prison, picked up one of these, went click. Do you remember that image? That picture was the picture that made a difference in the world, right? The picture of the man with the hood and the electric wires coming up, standing. Did you see it here? It was a terrible image. I don't know if you saw it. But that one picture of torture, right, made more impact on the world than the alphabetically written Red Cross account, which nobody took any notice of. So images in our world today are powerful, very, very powerful. Images with captions, images with sound, right? We send Instagrams to each other without words, just to say what we're doing, where we are, how we're feeling, right? So there's a powerful shift to so what we've tried to do with multimodality is how can we ask the same questions across those modes, right? So how do we get people to understand how images work, how audio works? So the 5 questions we ask are, what do the meanings refer to? Social, how do the meanings connect participants in the meaning unit? How do they hang together structurally? And how do the meanings fit into the larger world of meaning? How do they relate to other things? And whose interests do they serve? What's the ideological meaning? Who do they serve, right? We ask these questions of each one of these modes, right? And we train children to be able to do that, so that they know how to use multimodality effectively, right? Does one of them move? What's happened? Why is it not moving? Okay. Right. And I've just put this up. It's too much for you to see where I leave it. But these are the questions across linguistic, across visual, across spatial, across gestural and audio. If we ask those questions, we have a text which is visual. It will have a text which has audio. How do we have a grammar to talk about multimodality? Right? In fact, Will and I have been asked by Cambridge to write a book about it that elaborates on that, and we're in the process of doing it. But we have a grammar for symbolic literacy, but we don't have a grammar as teachers for the visual, a grammar for the audio, a grammar for the spatial. So although I'm saying literacy is multimodal, right, certainly in math and science it's multimodal, but in other subjects too, what's the grammar, what are the design elements? But these are the 5 questions we ask across each one of them, right? In order to learn. Now you might say, what's this got to do with little kids? I'll show you in a minute. Some of it's parallel, some of it isn't. I'll just do this quickly. If I ask you to think of that sentence, the mountains loomed large. It's a sentence. Think about it. What's the mental image? Have you got a mental image about the mountains loom large? Are there mountains in your country? Okay, correct. Here's the visual of that same sentence. It's my village. This is where I was born. Right down the bottom here is my house, somewhere down here. You can't see it in the village in Greece. Right? It's very different. See, the sentence creates some kind of meaning, and the image creates different kinds of meaning. So although we can ask the same questions and have parallel ideas about meaning making, they're also very different. So writing is sequential, it prioritizes time, and it's a process. Whereas the image, you can have simultaneous meanings coming together, and it prioritizes space. So these are the sorts of things learners need to know if they're going to operate in multimodality. Now, this is a kindergarten classroom where teachers are using multimodality. This is one of our grad students, like you, who was doing this work. It's What Is His Walk? And it's a book about a chicken and a fox. Right? It's a children's book. And what the teacher did is she read the book. All the kids had the book and they read the book, right? That was one thing they did. Then she got the kids to look at the book without the writing, with just the pictures. And then she got the kids to hear the story, just hear it without the pictures, and just to hear the sounds, right? And this is what she asked each time. So she asked those 5 questions. So first of all, this is Rosie walked. She went for a walk across the yard, across the pond, over the haycock, over the mill, through the fence, under the beehive. It goes on like that. So she asked them, what's happening? How do you feel when you read it? Right? How do the words hang together? What sort of words were used in this story? Right? And what's it about? Right? Is it trying to scare you? Is it trying to teach you something? So the little kids, they were little kids, they did this work in the linguistic area. Then she just looked at the pictures. So what's happening? So they're looking at the chicken being chased by the fox, right? And then at what level is it happening? It's at eye level, it's not from the top. It's well, how does that make you feel? The angle at which it's coming at? What are the images like? Are they realistic? Are they abstract? How does that make you feel? They're not photographs, they're drawings. And again, well, how's it making you feel? Are these humanized? Chickens are like humans. Why? The fox is like a human. What does that do to you? Right? So they looked at the visuals and the kids played with that. And then she did the audio. So what are the sound effects? Is the music happy or optimistic? How do you feel about it? What is repetitive about it, and how does repetition work in the story? I'm going to see if I can play it for you. No, let me go back. I want to play it. Here it is. You're welcome. Oh, you go. Is it in here? Is it in here? Send it. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't hear it. Oh. Anyway, it's got a hillbilly music, it's very uppity, but the kids listen to it. I'm sorry you can't, it's not playing. I'll try it again, but...
Is that the play,
It
isn't
says
it?
media not found on there.
Oh, media not.
Oh, okay. No, it's
Okay,
not.
all right. So let me take it to the teacher then. I hope, is that media not found either?
When preps come to school, they come from a variety of different entry points, and they've all got to learn a new language at school and a new way to make meaning. So the thing that they know most about is themselves. So we worked on themselves and their own facial expressions, and we played lots of games with using facial expressions and getting to know the language of feelings and things like that. We used magazines, looking at pictures and going through and cutting out different expressions that people had and different stances to try and determine how they were feeling. We found that most of those were really happy sort of faces in the magazines. And then we used those as a prompt with the digital camera for the children to do their own expressions and make their own poster. I chose Rosie's Walk because, as I said before, the visual literacy side I was quite confident with. So I felt if I started with something I was personally confident with, then I could explore it in a little bit more depth in another area. Rosie the hen went for a walk. I chose to introduce Rosie's Walk because we were doing the farm too, it fitted in with that area. And introduced it as a read too, but it told them to look at the story that was happening in the pictures. What's happening now?
It's gonna fall down the water.
He is going to fall down in the water. When he was rereading Rosie's Walk, children started to say what sound effects just spontaneously that would happen. And I thought it'd be interesting for them to watch the video without the sound and see what sort of connections they made later. So we sort of watched it and I did the narration. So they saw the pictures moving from the book and they got that concept of what was happening and the fox really following and Rosie not watching. But they didn't have any idea of what sounds would be accompanying it when they watched it the second time with the sound, because they were really cued into what sound effects. And I noticed that when the rake went and they heard the sound effect that they had anticipated, or even if it was something different, they'd turn to each other and they'd look, and they were really ready for listening in for that sort of thing. So I was really pleased. And watching them move to the music, which they weren't expecting, which was quite different. When we were doing the drawing of Rosie's Walk, one little child came up to me and showing me his picture and pointed to a part of his picture saying the fox has got a sad mouth because he's feeling unhappy, and just making those connections and using the language that I was using. And we're already going from quite general language about our feelings and about the modes to quite specific language, and we're starting to even introduce terms like sound effects.
Right. So you can see how she's using design elements to help them understand how the alphabetical worked, how the visual worked, and how the audio worked. But she started with the kids' own experiences and then built up a vocabulary which was able to deploy across those different modes. So she's preparing them for making meaning in multimodal ways and for having a language and a set of tools to be able to do that effectively. And that's in a kindergarten classroom. Right, so the last point I want to make is about pedagogy. And really, in the end, everything I've said is fine, but without the appropriate pedagogy, again, it's, turning the page and getting through the curriculum. It doesn't necessarily transform people. And pedagogy, there are historically different varieties of pedagogy, and I've just tried to sum it up here. There's the progressivist, which is about situated practice, which is you place kids in experiences, right? And they learn to understand things through the touching and feeling and going to a pond, and if you're going to do ponds or whatever. So experiential, situated learning. There's another pedagogy which is called overt instruction, right? When we tell you what needs to happen and you need to remember it, it's building concepts. So that teacher, remember, she started with experiential learning. She got them to do their faces and their hands. And then she did overt instruction. They developed concepts that they were using. And then the third one is critical framing, analysing. So the kids had to think about the purpose of the sound or the purpose of the type of picture that was designed or the kind of words that were chosen. And we call that critical pedagogy. And then, of course, they had to apply it. And if they'd learned something, if they could apply it correctly by producing their own work. Now, some people in progressivist pedagogy like to stay here and then here and sometimes miss out on the conceptual work and the analytical work. Right? Some pedagogy only stay in this domain. What I'm telling you, and far too quickly, is that you have to make the choice. The choice isn't in the description of the instructional activity, right? It's what is the purpose of the subject, where is the child, and where do you want to take them? So, you know, if something is entirely new, if you want to introduce something like ponds, say you're looking at ponds and what grows in ponds, for some kids it might be what they're familiar with, you know, because they have a pond or they've been to pond. But for some kids it might be entirely new, right? But you're immersing them in it. And here, of course, in theory making, you have to have name your concepts, but also understand what the purpose, the theoretical purpose is of that concept. And likewise with critical framing, we need to, in terms of its functions and in terms of the critical dimension. And in transformed, you need to apply something correctly, but you also need to apply it creatively. Because when you apply something creatively, that's when you know that real learning has occurred. Just to repeat what you've remembered is good, but it's not enough for transformation. Now, the instructional choices are not accidental. You have to design them deliberately. So if you look at situated practice, if you go to experience in the known and the new, you might, with the known, you might have a conversation, you might explore the playground, you might observe. All that is in the context of the known. But if you have situated practice with the new, you might want to conduct a survey, ask some questions, right? It's a different kind of activity. The only reason I'm putting this up is to say that the instructional activities themselves have pedagogical implications, right? And this is just a sample of how they're different, right, in situated practice. And I'm going to do that for each one of these modes. But as I said, I'll leave this with you so that you can go into it again. If you do overt instruction, you can use a concept organizer, right? You can develop some meta language, create a glossary or a dictionary for your concepts. But if you're theorizing, you have to say, explain something, right? So explain that concept. How does it work, right? Develop a taxonomy. What comes first? What comes second? What comes third? So it's not just a list that you're memorizing, right? So the activities are different depending on the pedagogical purpose. And you, the teacher, only knows that purpose. It's never in the textbook, right? It's in your choice from the textbook or your choice from the resources available to you. So that's in that verb instruction. So here we have critical framing. You could do a storyboard, you can use metaphors, you know, a flow diagram, you know, or you can review or debate, right? Which is very different from doing this. You can do a SWOT analysis, what's the strengths and weaknesses of any particular, you can see how they're different, right? This one is about the function of something, whether it's writing or visual, and the other is the critical aspect of it. And in transformed practice, you know, you could have solving a problem, applying the skills, or if you're going to be creative, you might want to define a new problem, right? That is comparable, right? Have an action plan to do something about a particular issue, right? Or, you know, decision-making strategy, right? So very different from just repeating or recalling or applying what you've learned, taking it to the next step. So, I've come to the end. Hallelujah. So, pedagogy, really important. You are professionals. You're making choices. You're making choices because you know the diversity of your classroom, right? And because also you're using multimodality to be able to bridge those things, right? Different modes that might get to where you want to go depending on your subject. And so the teacher is the designer, the student is a co-designer, right? Choosing from the pedagogical approach, writing and sharing your lesson plans. I'm not going to teach you about this part, but now in America, one of the reasons we're in America is because we got money to be able to work on this in the digital space. Now, I learned that your government is giving money to create learning units in the senior years, right? For the senior years of high school, online learning, right? But we said, we don't want online learning to just be old-fashioned learning that moves. How do we apply these in the learning space? So we have actually got $6 million from different sources in America, and we've invented a platform to do that. But I'm not talking about that now. I'm just telling you where our research has taken us next, because the affordances of the new technology allow you, with the technology, to differentiate for one child, for 3 kids, to make different choices. The power there to achieve these goals is phenomenal, and we haven't yet tested it. So we haven't yet pushed it. The first generation of online tools was very traditional didactic pedagogy, right? So that's the end, and for me, we're going to ask questions, and did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Sisters, thank you. Yes, I got it right?
Yes.
Excellent. Google Translate. You can contact us here, and here's some of the works, and I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Ask me questions. See, these devices are everywhere, multitasking. Some people ban them, but I don't, because I think we've got to learn how to use devices and how to multitask. You know, it's like saying don't have books in the classroom, or don't think, or don't daydream. You know, you can sit in here and daydream if you want to. So the devices are just tools that we need to manage.
So we have to use the devices in a good way?
Yes, it's not the device, it's what happens in it. Right? So if you haven't put anything in it that you want the kids to use, they're going to use it their way.
But we have to limit it.
Yes, yes. But in the classroom, you can put anything you want into a Chromebook, right? You know, with children. You know, you can put anything you want into a Chromebook. And we limit books. Some books are bad for kids. So, you know, we just have to be sensible. We have to view it the same way. The same way, you know, it's just access. Right? So the same way as we view all materials, it's the teacher's job to put the content in it that you want, to decide what, and teach a child how to be discerning, what to use, and what, negotiate with families about what's allowed and what's not. We do that with books, we do that with videos, we do it. We mustn't think of this as strange anymore. Remember, 90% of everybody's on this stuff.
Can I follow up on that question and ask about...
Is this for me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Oh, no, I had one from the hotel. That's good.
While you take a sip, thinking more about like research that you've done or colleagues from the New London group,
Yes.
specifically about mobile devices and sort of their role and impact in early childhood.
Nicola Yellen has done a lot of work. I don't know if you've seen her work. It's all over the place because it's early. And the people who invented what goes on there are people from games and from business. We have avoided it. Oh, it's the devil. Right? Educators. Educators have not engaged and invent, and it's costly. So we got $6 million, it's not enough. Right? It's very costly. It's not enough. So we as educators have to invent what goes on. And the first generation is not good stuff. It's okay, but it's not good stuff. Right? It's an emerging thing, right? And you were correct to say it's the affordances of the digital, anywhere, anytime learning. Fantastic. So your kids can be learning at home and learning here with the parents. Instant feedback, right? That's amazing. They don't have to wait for the test at the end. You can give the feedback just like on Facebook or immediately to the kids or the parents. Very good. You know, peer-to-peer, you know, when kids work collaboratively. Very important, you know. Data that you get that tells you how, you know, the affordances are enormous. And the research is all over the place because the research is on the first generation and it's unevenly good. Right? It's uneven. Jim G, if you read Jim G's work, who's the most important educator, he says, what's really important about games, he looked at games, is that we don't like cheating, right? We think cheating is bad. Whereas in games, cheating is good. That's how you get ahead, right? You learn from each other, and you give each other tips. You want to get ahead. You get somebody else to get ahead. Well, why don't we do that in the classroom? Why don't we wait to the end to say B, A, C, D? What good is that? Wouldn't it be better if we all aimed for A's and helped each other, you know, the help economy? Well, this space allows for that, right? It allows for that. But we have to make it, right? We. So if there's one message to you, you're teachers now, you might be coders tomorrow, or designers, or principals, or you never know what you're going to be. You have to populate the space. Because if you just leave it to the gamers, I'll tell you something funny. I just used the PowerPoint, right? The PowerPoint was invented in the US, and guess who used it most? Can you guess when that was first used?
Business.
Nope.
Military.
The military. That's why it has bullet points. It has bullet points, right? And it has direct instruction, no narrative, sequence, order, 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 step A, step B, step C. For us to use it, strip it all out. Because it wasn't designed for us.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, you can.
So, for my class, which is not this one, I teach learning technologies in the
Oh,
classroom,
right.
and we've actually gone through the e-affordances for e-learning. Is there one that you've found through yourself or through other researchers, one of the e-affordances that have influenced the most, or?
I went to Hattie's work, right, and aligned, you know, that work that he did about what works and what doesn't work against our affordances. And the affordances are actually all highly effective, right? Collaborative learning, highly effective. Learning together, learning from each other, very powerful. Look, peer-to-peer, there is no, like teacher to you is one thing, but peer-to-peer is even more powerful. And if you get peer-to-peers to get more effective at doing it, better at it, so you get rewarded for giving good feedback, right? Peer-to-peer is very powerful. Anywhere, anytime is pretty powerful. If it's structured, right? Anywhere, anytime. It's not 9 to 3, it's anywhere, anytime. So you see, all of them are, the 7 affordances that we've named, the metacognition, all of those align with high effect in aggregated research around those affordances. And the technology allows that. Right. But again, I don't want to be over romantic about it. You know, there's danger in books, there's danger in television, there's danger in technology, right? There's danger in anything that is not, the Greeks say, pan, meton, ariston. You know, like you have to aim at evenness, you know. If you're obsessive about one thing, that's all you like. If you play football all the time, 24 hours a day or whatever, it's not going to be good for you either. Yeah. You know, so it's about balance and appropriate choices. We have a whole world in front of us that we have to learn about, right, in order to help our children. We can't keep it away from them, right? Because there isn't an industry that doesn't use new technology. Not an industry. We have been slow in education because educators don't have the resources to make the content. And we rely on, you know, Hollywood or Turner or Pearson's, or we rely, because it's very costly. The costs are coming down. You know, we can create apps and all sorts of things. And we're now teaching coding. My little 8-year-old, and she's learning coding. She's 7.5, 8, and she's learning to code the new language. So they can invent those things, and it's not done for them.
So, Miss, you mean that there's...
Sorry?
You mean that there's no, best way to teach the children?
Through technology.
They should be balanced with it.
Yes, perfect. There is no best way. If you weren't here at the beginning, but if everybody is unique and different, you have to know that and align. Right? So aspirin clears a headache. But I can't give everybody aspirin. Sometimes I got to give them something else, because that's good. Same with teaching. In the old days, there was the best way, which was my way. Right? The old days, the teacher's way. And the teacher was controlled by a textbook, right? And the textbooks were written by governments, really, right? And we just had to repeat them. It's fine, it was okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not enough for the modern world. Remember, we're preparing people for the future, which is complex, multicultural, maybe the planet will end, with ecological disaster, who knows? Yesterday I was walking, 30-degree heat, I thought, this is what it's going to be like all over the world. We're going to burn.
It was about 37, I think, yesterday.
We're going to burn. And I think, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to prepare people to know that the planet needs us to care for it?
You should go into sunblock manufacturing.
But also something crazy. It's crazy. You'll forgive me. So I saw these Northern European flower beds, right? And so we went to the mosque. Bill and I went to the mosque. And the flower beds, and they had rows and rows and rows and rows of water pipes to feed the Northern European flowers. Why? The desert is beautiful. Why not make the desert beautiful? Why use all that water for North American, the North European flowers? What's the matter with us? And lawn. Right, we think that's beauty. But is it? See, that's the part about critical pedagogy, right? I love flowers. Right? Like, we worked a lot with Indigenous people in Australia. And they used to say, why do you cut the flowers? What's the matter with you? They're beautiful out there. Why do you cut them and put them in a vase? I've never thought about that, and I still buy flowers and put them in a vase, but every time I think of that Aboriginal man who told me that, I feel a bit guilty, but I don't stop. But anyway, this is just the issues about what's best. The word what's best. The word what's best is determined by individuals and collectively, and it's changed. But in a classroom, there's no single best. Not for a boy, not for a girl, not for a 6-year-old, not for a 2-year-old. There's collective things that we need to do. We need to sing together. We need to play together. That's best.
Because like in the beginning, I feel like I want to know what the best things to teach the children. Then I recognize like there are many different ways.
Yes, you need expanded repertoire. That's what we said earlier. Like not one song, but many songs. Not one way, but many ways. And what's best is when you see the child's changed. Your measure of what's best is the child performing. Right? It's not the content. It's you tracking the learner. Have they learnt math? Have they learnt the history? Are they happy? Happiness matters. Right? Happiness matters. They've got to be happy. If they're not happy, right? How do we ensure that they are happy? Strong identity. Feel good about themselves. Are successful. In the old days we'd say, make them feel bad, they'll work harder. Sometimes it works. Right? But mostly it doesn't, and not with today's babies. Have you seen mothers with children and babies? Oh, my darling, look beautiful. What shoes do you want to wear today? What do you want to eat today? Different generation of kids. Right? Different generation of kids. We, the parents, produce, and the grandparents, much worse. Grandparents are much worse. We produce a generation of children who want to make choices, want to express themselves. When I was growing up, I had one pair of shoes. When they weren't any good, my mother bought me another pair. But now,
But also we should control, we should control.
they should. But try that. My daughter says she's not going to give me my grandchild anymore because she can't control me. What I mean is there's a generational shift. So if you can't control, you have to teach discernment, how you choose and what the choice means. So, sugar, right, for kids, sugar. You watch kids drink It's poison. Sugar is straight poison. And we put soda in babies' bottles. We have to teach little kids themselves that that is poison. Okay? Poison. My little 7-year-old, she says, yeah, can I have a donut? Yeah, she calls me, yeah, have a donut. And she's with, no, your mother will kill me. You can't see me again. Yeah, can I have a donut? It's attention.
Yeah.
It's attention. But the more knowledge we have, not don't do this because I told you, right? I have to say, darling, you'll get sick. You know, your teeth will fall out. You know, look at this. You know, you know what I mean? You have to give them purpose. You know, so best is the outcome. The measure of best is the outcome. And you might have to try different things. But learning from, see, your teacher has brought us here because she thinks we have something to offer you. Your teacher has something to offer you. Others have. So we learn. That's how we learn. Right? And then you choose. See, when I walk away, you will choose what you will remember, and you'll forget everything you think doesn't matter to you. Right? It might be one thing, it might be nothing.
Excuse me, I want to say something. Like I read about mother, how can she like make her daughter do? Like when she told him, like clean your room now or after 5 minutes. Like when you want to clean it, like to not say to him, you need to clean it. Like to give him that choice, but like in a way that he can do it.
Whether you want green or white vegetables.
Remember I said, change the balance of agency. You heard me say that, right? Change the balance. If it's only the mother saying it, right? If it's only the mother saying change your room, how do you change the balance of agency so the child takes responsibility for the room, right? So you've got to figure out how the kid becomes responsible. It might be television, ice cream, or we want to do extra, but somehow it can't be just you do it because I tell you. That's important too, but the child has to take pride and pleasure in doing that, and you have to figure out how to make that happen. And we as educators teach that in the classroom, so the children are monitors. Some kids clean the board, some kids put the books away. You know, that's important learning, taking responsibility, looking after a child that needs help. So we as teachers, our children live in our classrooms. They live in the classrooms. They don't just come there to learn. And so like the mum and dad, we have to encourage the living, right? The living, sharing, right? So the living part of it is just as important, you know, sharing a book, sharing a table, sitting next to another child, moving kids around so they're working with each other. You know, if there's a disabled child, you know, looking after them. You know, you build habits. You build habits. And you work with parents too to strengthen those habits. Right. It's not easy because we have, as I said, there's a generational shift now. There is all over the world. All over the world there's a generational shift. The world is changing because agency is changing. And the new technology has something to do with it. The power of the new technology to express yourself and to make meaning and to influence. So our job is to teach kids human skills, human values as well.
Thanks so much, Dr. Mary. I know that some of the students have classes to go to because one lady had a meeting to go to, but I would encourage anybody who needs to stay because Dr. Bailey
I'll leave you
some more time.
and you can.
It was really
So thank you very
given us
much
so
and
much
good luck.
food for thought. Thank you.